a small apartment in the peaceful town of Taos, New Mexico. A woman who had overcome so many challenges, from the death of her beloved husband to the struggles of life, was ultimately brutally murdered, right in the place where she sought peace. The killer wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. It was a neighbor, someone who had helped her move in, someone who smiled and talked friendly. 8 knife wounds, a confession, and a horrifying truth about evil hiding right next to us. Welcome to the Case Files, where we open the most shocking crime files, detail by detail, confession by confession, so you can understand exactly what happened when darkness descends. Today, we're diving deep into a horrific murder case that shook the peaceful art town of Taos in the summer of 2002. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive into the infamous case of 8 knife wounds in the night, the Marioara Shand case, the story of a resilient woman who survived many tragedies but couldn't escape a brutal death in the small home she had just moved into. This is a story about betrayal, about unpredictable evil, and about justice's arduous journey. Part 1. The Woman from Yugoslavia. A Past Full of Tears. Marioara Shand was born in 1965 in the former Yugoslavia, but grew up in Sweden, where she always felt like an outsider. She didn't have many friends, but Marioara wasn't self-pitying. She loved solitude, loved traveling, exploring the world, and seeking new experiences. Her career took her to the Middle East, where she worked as a flight attendant, then moved to Bahrain, a small, wealthy country in the Persian Gulf. It was here that Marioara's life changed when she met Mason, an American pilot serving at the U.S. Naval Base in Bahrain. Mason was captivated by Marioara from their first meeting. She was cheerful, kind, beautiful, and had a remarkable vitality. He felt like he'd found everything he'd been dreaming of. In 1992, they got married, but happiness didn't last. After moving to California, Mason was diagnosed with an extremely rare disease, fungal brain infection, a condition with only 2 recorded cases in the U.S. at that time. He had to undergo surgery to remove the fungus from his brain, but post-surgical complications caused him to have seizures and a lengthy recovery process. Marioara didn't leave her husband even in the most difficult circumstances. She cared for him day by day, hoping they would weather this storm. And they did, at least for a short while. But a few years later, tragedy struck again. Mason was in a serious car accident. He was driving his sports car on the highway when a truck from the opposite lane crossed over and hit him. Tests showed the truck driver had a high blood alcohol level. Mason died on the spot. A close friend of Mason's, also a colleague at the naval base, had to break the news to Marioara. I'll never forget her face when she opened the door. She knew immediately something was wrong. Mason wasn't home. It was the hardest moment in my career, the friend recalled. Marioara completely collapsed. She lost the man who had fought death alongside her, who had overcome a rare disease only to be taken away by a senseless accident. Part 2. A Fresh Start in Taos. Fragile Hope. After Mason's death, Marioara found comfort with Michael Edmund, another close friend of Mason's. They knew each other from California, and Michael always felt trusting and sympathetic toward what Marioara had been through. They had a lot in common. They both loved quietness, didn't like noisy life. Their relationship developed quickly. In the summer of 2002, they both decided to move to Taos, New Mexico, a small, peaceful town nestled in the mountains, famous for its art community and native culture. This was a place not tied to Marioara's painful memories. This was a chance to start over. Michael and Marioara were excited about the new house they were building. They spent time decorating the interior, gardening, exploring the town. On the surface, they were the perfect couple. But inside, Marioara still hadn't truly recovered. Mason's death still haunted her. Despite trying to start over, the pain didn't easily fade. In July 2002, after a few months living with Michael, Marioara made a surprising decision. She wanted to move out on her own. Perhaps she realized she needed more time alone. Perhaps they realized each person's path was different. Marioara moved to a small apartment in the St. Francis Plaza area in Ranchos de Taos, on the other side of town. The apartment had only one bedroom and one bathroom. The living room and kitchen shared one space. Around her were friendly neighbors. The landlord was Edward Duran, an elderly man, and his grandson, Nathaniel Duran, 17 years old, lived right next to her apartment. Nathaniel had helped Marioara move in, appearing friendly and polite. Marioara found work at a local hotel, Hampton Inn, as a housekeeper. The job wasn't prestigious, but it was stable. Every morning, she drove to the hotel, worked diligently, then returned home in the afternoon. The neighbors often saw her coming and going. They greeted each other, smiled. Life seemed to be gradually stabilizing. But then, in early July 2002, something horrific happened. Part 3, July 7th, 2002, Night of Horror. On July 9th, 2002, Marioara's neighbors began to worry. Her car had been parked in the same spot for several days without moving. Usually, every morning, Marioara drove to work right on time. But this time, the car remained still. They called her, but no one answered. A feeling of unease spread. Finally, they decided to call the police. The Taos County Sheriff's Office quickly arrived at the scene at 6 p.m. When approaching the apartment door, they discovered something suspicious. There were bloodstains on the door. They knocked on the door, but no one opened. Finally, they decided to break the door down. The scene inside horrified everyone present. Blood was splattered all over the floor. Bloodstains shot up the walls, evidence of a brutal struggle. Going through the kitchen, they found Marioara's body lying in the bedroom. Her left hand was covering her face, with deep wounds on her hand, signs showing she had tried to defend herself. The body's position suggested she may have been sexually assaulted. The forensic examination later confirmed Marioara had multiple stab wounds to the head, neck, chest, abdomen, and back. The wounds on her fingers showed she had desperately tried to block the knife. This wasn't a robbery. Nothing of value was taken. The attacker didn't come to steal. The attacker came to kill Marioara. Part 4. First clues. The watch and footprints. The investigators began searching the scene. They found several important clues. 1. Footprints. From the entrance to the bedroom, there were clear footprints, allowing them to determine the attacker's shoe size and type. 2. A men's watch. Under Marioara's head, they found a men's watch. This could be the killer's watch, dropped during the struggle. 3. No signs of forced entry. The door wasn't broken. The windows weren't pried open. This suggested Marioara may have opened the door herself for the attacker, meaning she knew the person. 4. Semen. The forensic expert found semen in the victim's body and extracted DNA. The attacker had assaulted the victim while she was dying, or had just died. Part 5. First suspect, Nathaniel Duran and his friend. Mitro. The first person questioned was Nathaniel Duran, 17 years old, the landlord's grandson, living right next to Marioara's apartment. When asked, Nathaniel said he had only met Marioara once and hadn't heard anything unusual. He also said he had entered the apartment before she moved in to help his grandfather clean up. But Nathaniel revealed something noteworthy. "You should investigate my friend Mitro Rowe. He's been acting strange lately." Mitro, 19 years old, lived less than 2 kilometers from Marioara's home and had been arrested for minor violations. The police decided to question him. When asked where he was the night of the crime, Mitro constantly changed his story. Maybe it was Friday, or maybe Saturday, I don't remember clearly. What was particularly odd was when Mitro said he couldn't remember the time because his watch was broken, but he was still wearing a watch that was too big. Mitro explained, "It's a gift from my grandmother. Wearing it like this is trendy now." The police suspected the watch found under Marioara's head might belong to Mitro. They asked Mitro to provide a DNA sample, and he agreed. Part 6. The second case. Leanne Martinez and widespread panic. But before Mitro's DNA results came back, something else horrific happened. On July 14, 2002, just 1 week after Marioara was found dead, the police received notification of another murder. The victim was Leanne Martinez, 22 years old, killed near where Marioara lived. The details were frighteningly similar. Knife wounds, signs of sexual assault, a blood-soaked crime scene. The investigators immediately thought they might be facing a serial killer. Previously, the police had kept information about Marioara's case confidential to avoid panic. But now, with 2 murders within a week, they couldn't stay silent anymore. The information was widely released. The town of Taos, where only 1 murder was recorded in 2001, now fell into panic. Women didn't dare go out alone. Everyone locked their doors carefully. Everyone suspected everyone. Part 7. Michael Edmond, ex-boyfriend, becomes a suspect. During the investigation, police received information from Marioara's co-worker. Recently, she had a serious conflict with her ex-boyfriend, Michael Edmond, to the point where she had to leave him and move out. Considering the brutal nature of the case, this could be a crime of jealousy. Michael became a potential suspect. Police obtained a warrant to search Michael's house. They searched every corner, monitored his every move, even when he went to the bathroom. They looked for any items related to the crime scene, watch purchase receipts, watch boxes, or photos of Marioara wearing a watch. They also examined shoes, comparing the sole patterns with the footprints found at Marioara's apartment. When asked about his whereabouts the night of the murder, Michael stated, "I was home alone. No one witnessed it." Michael recalled, "I panicked. Obviously, they suspected me. I just moved here, have no friends, don't know anyone. How dare they suspect me?" Police paid special attention when they discovered Michael's knife block had 2 empty slots. Michael explained that he bought the knife block first, then bought knives later. At the end of the interrogation, Michael asked, "Where did this happen?" The police asked back, "You don't know?" Michael replied, "I don't know where she is. She's disappeared for days without notice many times before." The answer sounded vague, but there wasn't enough evidence to arrest him. Police asked Michael to provide a DNA sample, and he agreed. Part 8. Richard Frescas, perpetrator of the second case. Meanwhile, the investigation into Leanne Martinez's death was progressing. Police discovered a man named Richard Frescas had sold a car CD player similar to an item missing from the victim's car. But when police tried to find Richard for questioning, he had disappeared. Fortunately, Richard's relative provided a clue. He had gone to his cousin's house and left some clothes there. These items were seized as evidence, including blood-stained shoes that Richard had thrown away. The crucial question: did the shoe sole pattern match the footprints at Marioara's crime scene? The investigators also discovered a connection between Leanne Martinez and Richard Frescas. Leanne had a wide circle of friends, and Richard frequently socialized with this group. But finding a connection between Marioara and Richard was more difficult. Following their instinct, the investigators went to where Marioara worked, Hampton Inn. When talking with the manager, they found an important clue. In the hotel records, there was a reservation receipt for Richard Frescas. Check-in date: June 8, 2002 at 4:54 p.m. Based on the cleaning schedule, the investigators confirmed Marioara was the person who cleaned that room after Richard checked out. This means the two may have had contact less than a month before she was murdered. Additionally, they discovered Richard had worked at a church located right on the plaza where Marioara lived. There's a possibility they had encountered each other in this area. Part 9. Arresting Richard Fresquez. But it still wasn't the end. A week later, federal agents arrested Richard in California. Taos police immediately went to interrogate him. They asked Richard about his whereabouts during the days Marioara was alive. Richard replied that he was always elsewhere, not involved with the crime scene. "I tried to stay away from the church out of respect," Richard said. Police shifted to asking about Leanne Martinez. "We know you're the one who killed Leanne Martinez. Maybe it was an accident, but you did it." But Richard didn't confess. He denied involvement in both cases, provided a DNA sample, and requested a lawyer. He was arrested for previous violations, and police waited for the test results. At that point, they didn't consider the possibility of two different killers. All evidence pointed to one perpetrator. But then something unexpected happened. The lab report confirmed. DNA from semen found on Leanne Martinez's body matched Richard Fresquez's sample. The blood on his shoes also matched. However, there was no evidence linking Richard to Marioara's death. Richard Fresquez was found guilty in Leanne Martinez's case and received a life sentence. But Marioara's case remained at a standstill. Could there be two different killers? Could this coincidence be just random? Part 10. The fateful call. I know who killed her. The detectives almost had to start over from scratch. Then suddenly, they received a call to the emergency hotline. "I want to report something. I know who killed the woman in the Rancho area." "Who?" "Nathaniel Duran. I saw blood on him." Nathaniel Duran, the landlord's grandson, who had been questioned by police in the early days. The caller said he had given Nathaniel a ride. At that time, Nathaniel was very anxious, scared, trembling, and had blood on his hair and ears. Nathaniel had told the caller that he had done something to a woman. The caller recounted, "Nathaniel called me, asked me to drive him. I noticed he was acting really strange, just kept shaking. When I asked, he said he had done something terrible to a girl, hurt her. I asked, 'Is she still alive?' And he answered, 'I stabbed her 8 times. Did he say why? He said he was possessed by a demon. I asked if he used drugs. He said he used cocaine. This person's account matched perfectly with the crime scene examination, details that had never been publicly disclosed. This made Nathaniel the #1 suspect. Part 11. Solid evidence. The shoes, wound, and DNA. Police traced the phone number, and the informant agreed to testify. They immediately searched Nathaniel's house and discovered athletic shoes with soles matching the footprints at the crime scene. With this evidence, they brought Nathaniel to the station to collect a DNA sample. He agreed, but was very nervous, constantly asking when the results would be ready. The investigators also photographed his hands to check for wounds, and sure enough, there was a deep cut on his right palm. "When did you get hurt?" "Recently, up in the mountains. I slipped." When asked about the night of July 6th going into the 7th, the time of the crime, Nathaniel said, "I went to Peñasco. I went to a party with friends." Police suspected he was deliberately trying to distance himself from the crime scene. They applied a soft tactic. "We just want to eliminate you from the suspect list. If you're innocent, that's even better." Nathaniel reacted. "If I were involved, I wouldn't have come here." Then, the detective changed his tone. "Nathaniel, we have a lot of experience. All the signs point to you. You're the one who did this." At this point, Nathaniel collapsed, burst into tears. It was an accident. Really, it was an accident. After regaining his composure, Nathaniel demanded a lawyer. The interrogation ended at 12:45. Nathaniel Duran was detained. Part 12. DNA results. Undeniable truth. Not long after, the DNA results from Marioara's body were released. A perfect match with Nathaniel Duran's sample. He was charged with rape and murder of Marioara Shand. Part 13. The trial. Futile defense. The trial took place on December 16, 2003. The defense attorney argued that Nathaniel visited Marioara. They consensually had relations. Then he left. He had no idea what happened after that. But the jury wasn't convinced. They reviewed the evidence. Multiple stab wounds to the head, neck, chest, abdomen, back. Defensive wounds on the victim's fingers. Stab wound to the jugular vein, a fatal area. Confession to friends. I stabbed her 8 times. Nathaniel's indifferent attitude when talking about the victim. The jury concluded Nathaniel Duran was guilty. He was sentenced on 3 charges: first-degree murder, life imprisonment, criminal sexual penetration with a deadly weapon. 9 years, tampering with evidence. 18 months. The sentences were to be served consecutively. Part 14. Appeal. Final effort fails. In 2006, the New Mexico Supreme Court reviewed Nathaniel Duran's appeal. His attorney argued there wasn't sufficient evidence to prove intent to kill, but the court rejected it. In its ruling, the court stated, physical evidence showed a prolonged attack with multiple stab wounds to vital areas. The victim tried to block the attacker from the bedroom and attempted to escape through the window. The stab wounds to the back and jugular vein showed clear intent to kill Nathaniel's statements. To friends, demonstrated an indifferent attitude toward the victim. The court upheld the first-degree murder conviction. However, the court vacated the tampering with evidence charge, concluding there wasn't sufficient evidence to prove Nathaniel deliberately concealed the murder weapon or blood-stained clothing. The murder case of Marioara Shand isn't just one woman's tragedy, but also reflects the terrifying dark sides hidden deep within even the most peaceful communities. Marioara, a kind, positive woman who had overcome many hardships, met her brutal end in the very small apartment she had just moved into. A place that should have been for healing and starting over became the scene of her final horror. What's notable is the perpetrator. Nathaniel Duran wasn't a mysterious stranger, not a criminal with a history of violence, but rather the next-door neighbor, the landlord's grandson, who appeared friendly and had helped Marioara move in. This is what made the public shudder, the feeling of not being able to know who to truly trust, and sometimes evil wears the mask of an acquaintance. The initial investigation hit many dead ends, from the first suspect being ex-boyfriend Michael Edmond, to Mitro, a young man with a minor criminal history and a suspicious watch, then to Richard Fresquez, the actual perpetrator of Leanne Martinez's murder. Police followed highly convincing theories, but ultimately had to rely on a chance phone call from someone who knew Nathaniel before the truth emerged. This story leaves many profound lessons. Vigilance is never excessive, even with those who seem most familiar. Killers aren't always strangers in the darkness. Sometimes it's a friend, a neighbor, someone who smiled at you in the morning and silently observed you all day. Justice isn't always easily achieved. Without persistence, meticulousness, and even luck in the investigation, Marioara might have died in silence, while the killer continued living peacefully right next to others. Psychological trauma and shocks in personal life, if not healed, can push someone into the most isolated and vulnerable situations. Marioara is a prime example of someone who always tried to overcome, but ultimately was pushed into danger by isolation itself and her circumstances. The light of justice. The case of Marioara Shand is a heartbreaking tragedy, but it's also a reminder about the fragility of life and the importance of justice. It shows that no matter how hard the perpetrator tries to hide, the truth will still be exposed. No secret can be buried forever. And finally, in Marioara's painful departure, we also see the light of truth. The light of people who refuse to give up. The light of justice. Though late, it still arrives. If you find this story meaningful, please share it so more people know about it. Subscribe to the Case Files channel to follow other shocking cases where we expose the truth behind horrific crimes. And most importantly, always be vigilant. Always protect yourself and your loved ones. Because behind every crime is a truth waiting to be revealed.